I stand in my childhood home, a stranger after 8 years of silence. The gold pendant at my throat trembles against my skin as I take in the familiar Christmas decorations, the smell of pine mixed with roasting turkey. Nothing has changed: the same china cabinet, the same family photos on the mantel where Merrick and Clayton's faces dominate. The dining room table stretches before me like a battlefield. It's time we discuss the future of Moore Manufacturing, my father announces, raising his glass. His voice carries the same authoritative tone that echoed through my childhood. As I approach retirement, I've made decisions about the company's leadership. My brothers straighten in their seats, exchanging quick glances. Mother smooths her napkin, eyes fixed on her plate. Merrick will take over as CEO, with Clayton as COO. Father's gaze slides past me to fix on his sons. The ownership will transfer equally between them. The Moore legacy continues through my boys. The room falls silent. I feel eyes darting toward me, then quickly away. My water glass grows slick in my grip. And Arletta? My mother's voice breaks the silence, tentative as a sparrow. Father clears his throat. Arletta has chosen her path. He doesn't look at me. The tech industry, playing with gadgets. My knuckles turn white around the glass. 8 years ago, I would have lowered my eyes, accepted this dismissal. 8 years and billions of dollars later, I find myself surprisingly calm. Understood, I say, voice steady. Father nods, satisfied with my apparent submission. My mind flashes back to the day I graduated with honors in computer science. Standing in this same dining room, diploma in hand, explaining my startup concept. Neural networks could revolutionize medical diagnostics, I'd said, eyes bright with possibility. Father had laughed. Sweetheart, that's just playing with gadgets. Leave the real business to your brothers. Merrick and Clayton had nodded along, their business degrees from state school apparently worth more than my MIT education. Find a good husband, Mother had suggested, patting my hand. Someone successful. I'd left that night, applied for every loan I could find, worked 3 jobs until the first investor believed in me. Now, Father lifts his fork, the matter settled. We'll draft the paperwork after the holidays. Of course, Arletta, you could still marry someone successful. There's always that route for a woman. Anyone. The table falls silent. Mother stares at her plate. Clayton shifts uncomfortably. I continue eating, each bite deliberate. The trembling in my hands stops. I set my fork down carefully, the silver making a soft click against fine china. Thank you for clarifying where I stand. I meet his eyes directly. It's helpful to have things stated so plainly. Father blinks, unused to direct challenge. Now, Arletta. No, please. I lift my hand slightly. You've made your position clear. I appreciate the honesty. Merrick and Clayton exchange uneasy glances. They've always been the golden sons lauded for mediocre achievements while my successes were minimized. Neither speaks in my defense now. Their silence makes them complicit. Mother's eyes dart between us. She's never stood against Father, not once in 40 years of marriage. She won't start now, not even for her only daughter. I realize, sitting at this table surrounded by family yet utterly alone, that my worth has always been measured differently. My brother's value is intrinsic, mine conditional. The revelation settles in my chest, not as pain but as clarity. Father continues discussing the transition plans, the company I helped modernize during college summers, the company whose outdated manufacturing processes I could revolutionize, the company that will never be mine. I take another sip of water, my reflection distorted in the crystal. Tomorrow, everything will change. Tonight, I let them believe they still hold all the power. The game pieces are set. They just don't know we're playing. Dessert sits half-eaten on Limoges china when my 15-year-old nephew Nico gasps. His fingers fumble with his tablet, nearly dropping it as he stares at the screen, mouth hanging open. Holy, he catches himself, glancing at his grandmother. Aunt Arletta, you're on the Forbes list. The room freezes. Merrick's fork clatters against his plate. Clayton's wine glass hovers midway to his lips. My mother's hand flies to her throat. Let me see that. Father's voice cuts through the silence, reaching for the tablet. Nico turns it toward the table instead. My face stares back at us, alongside the number that has just detonated our Christmas dinner. $2.8 billion. Neuromedicines acquired for $4.5 billion. Father reads aloud, his voice hollow. Revolutionary neural network technology expected to transform neurological diagnostics worldwide. 8 years of struggle, compressed into a headline they can finally understand. Well, Mother smooths her napkin. This is unexpected. We need to talk. Father pushes back from the table. In the living room, now. I follow him, wine glass in hand. Mother hurries after us while my brothers exchange glances that speak volumes. The living room walls showcase decades of family portraits. Merrick's graduation, Clayton's wedding, my brother's flanking father at hunting trips and industry events. My absence in these photos never felt so deliberate. Father remains standing while I take a seat on the sofa. Power dynamics unchanged since childhood. How long were you planning to keep this from us? His voice shakes, not with pride but accusation. I wasn't hiding anything. I sip my wine. The acquisition was announced 3 months ago. You could have called. Mother perches on the edge of an armchair, looking smaller than I remember. Like you called me? The words escape before I can soften them. Father's jaw tightens. I never thought you'd actually succeed with that computer nonsense. I was protecting you from disappointment. The truth at last, after years of "it's just a phase and leave the business to your brothers." Merrick clears his throat from the doorway. I should have told you. Arletta came to me for seed money, back when she started. I turned her down because Dad said we shouldn't encourage unrealistic dreams. My chest constricts. You knew how much I needed that loan. Your brother was following my advice. Father interjects. What about my letters? I ask Mother. I wrote every Christmas for 3 years. Brote. Her eyes drop to her lap. Gordon thought it best not to respond until you came to your senses. I intercepted them, she whispers. I'm sorry, Arletta. The betrayal burns fresh, even after all these years. 3 layers of rejection from father, brother, mother, each one cutting deeper than the last. Your success must be exaggerated. Father says, waving dismissively. These tech valuations are smoke and mirrors. They'll revise that number down within months. Father says, waving dismissively. Clayton joins us, hands in his pockets. Dad's right, these tech bubbles burst all the time. Actually, Merrick jumps in, his tone suddenly warm. We always knew you had potential, Arletta. Remember when I helped you with your computer class in high school? I stare at him. You copied my homework and got us both detention. I've been telling everyone how proud we are of you, Mother says, rewriting history before my eyes. I knew you'd do well, just not this well. Father nods, pivoting smoothly. The more drive for success. You got that from me, you know. The audacity steals my breath. 8 years of silence transformed into a lifetime of imagined support. Remember how I encouraged your college applications? Mother asks, eyes bright with invented memories. And I always said technology was the future, Father adds. Their desperate scramble to claim credit for my success should be laughable, but something in me still yearns for their approval. That small, wounded part of me that never stopped seeking validation nearly welcomes their revisionist history. For a moment, I'm tempted to accept this false narrative, if it means finally being embraced as family. My phone vibrates with a text. Miss Dobbins, my high school computer science teacher, just saw the Forbes article. I always knew you'd change the world, Arletta. So proud of the girl who stayed after class to learn Python when everyone else had gone home. The simple truth of her words washes over me like cool water. She saw me. She believed. No revisionist history needed. As I sit there watching my family scramble to rewrite our history, I wonder if I should correct their false narrative or simply let them believe what they wanted. Would setting the record straight bring healing, or would it only reopen old wounds that were better left closed? The answers don't come easily, but for the first time since arriving, I realize they're mine to determine, not theirs. The next day, after the article came out, I listen from the kitchen as my father's voice booms from his study. The door stands ajar, just enough for his words to carry clearly down the hallway. Yes, Charles, she finally made it. All that guidance I gave her about persistence paid off. My father laughs, the sound grating against my nerves. I always told her to think bigger. I grip the countertop, my knuckles whitening. 8 years of silence, and now he's rewriting our history to his brother, my uncle. The same uncle who once patted my head at graduation and said, "At least you're pretty enough to marry well." My phone buzzes for the 5th time today. Cousin Rachel wants funding for her skincare line. Aunt Patricia needs a small loan for her son's college tuition. The family tree suddenly remembers I exist, branches extending toward my wallet rather than my heart. Mrs. Moore? A woman's voice pulls me from my thoughts. The kitchen helper points to the landline. The Nebraska Chronicle is on the phone. They want to schedule an interview about raising a billionaire. A bitter laugh escapes my throat before I can contain it. The woman gives me a curious look. Tell them we're unavailable, I say, the word we tasting sour on my tongue. Later, alone in my childhood bedroom, I stare at the ceiling where glow-in-the-dark stars I placed when I was 12 still cling stubbornly. The memory washes over me like cold water. 3 jobs. The campus cafeteria at dawn, the library help desk between classes, and the 24-hour diner until midnight, my hands perpetually smelling of disinfectant and French fries. After father refused to pay for MIT, telling me computer science was wasting good money, I'd survived on determination and 4 hours of sleep. I remember crying silently in my dorm room, 3 years into my startup, when our first investor pulled out. The pitch deck scattered across my bed, red marked with rejections. That night, I'd nearly given up. Then came the email that changed everything. A father in Detroit, whose 8-year-old daughter had been misdiagnosed 3 times. My neural network caught what specialists had missed: a rare form of treatable epilepsy. "You gave my daughter her life back," he'd written. I printed that email. Still carry the folded paper in my wallet, edges soft from handling. A soft knock interrupts my thoughts. I wipe away unexpected moisture from my eyes. "Aunt Arletta?" A small voice calls through the door. "Can I come in?" Lacey stands in the doorway, clutching a laptop to her chest. At 13, she has Merrick's height but none of his swagger. My computer science teacher assigned this coding project, and I thought, maybe. She looks at her feet. "I want to be like you, not like them." For the first time since arriving, my smile feels genuine, reaching my eyes as warmth spreads through my chest. "Come here," I say, patting the bed beside me. "Let's see what we're working with." Later, I find myself standing outside my father's wood-paneled home office. The space remains frozen in time. Agricultural equipment models displayed on shelves, awards from the Manufacturing Association hanging on walls, the scent of leather and Old Spice. Gordon sits behind his mahogany desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviews papers. He looks smaller somehow, less intimidating than in my memories. "You wanted to see me?" I keep my voice neutral. He removes his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I've been thinking about what happened at dinner the other night." I wait, crossing my arms. "I just wanted to protect you from failure, Arletta." His voice softens. "The tech world is brutal. 9 out of 10 startups fail. I didn't want you to get hurt." The familiar justification ignites something inside me. Years of dismissal crystallizing into clarity. "You weren't protecting me," I say, voice steady. "You were silencing me." His eyes widen slightly. "Every time I shared an idea, you called it playing with gadgets. When I graduated with honors, you suggested I find a husband instead of building a company." My hands remain steady, my voice calm despite the fire in my chest. "That wasn't protection. That was control." "Now wait a minute. I never needed your permission to succeed, Dad." The realization fills me with unexpected lightness. I needed it to feel worthy of success. There's a difference. He stares at me, mouth partially open, no words emerging. My mind drifts to Miss Dobbins, my high school computer science teacher. The after-school hours she spent helping me apply for scholarships behind my father's back. "Your mind is exceptional, Arletta," she'd told me. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." While my family saw limitations, others saw potential. The contrast couldn't be clearer now as I stand taller in my father's office than I ever had before. "There's a family dinner tomorrow," I say, moving toward the door. I think it's time everyone heard the real story. Back in my room, I open my laptop, reviewing the audio recordings of my father's contradictory statements from the past 2 days. The lies about his support, the revisionist history. Tomorrow will change everything. I save the files to a folder labeled Truth and close my computer. Tomorrow night, from downstairs, I hear my father's voice calling everyone to the living room. "While we gather, I'd like to make a toast," he announces as I descend the stairs. "To my successful daughter who followed my advice." The crystal glasses clink. I smile, saying nothing. Yet, I raise my glass, mirroring my father's gesture from the night before. The room falls silent. My family watches with expressions ranging from curiosity to unease. "To family," I begin, my voice steady, "and to truth, as..." I lock eyes with each person around the table as I speak, a deliberate cadence to my words. 8 years ago, I stood in this dining room with my MIT diploma, the 4th of June, 2017. I explained my neural network concept for medical diagnostics. Father shifts in his chair. I continue without pausing. After being told to find a good husband instead of pursuing my gadget playing, I applied for 23 loans. All rejected. I looked directly at Merrick, including the one I asked you to co-sign on the 15th of July. Mother's eyes widen. She hadn't known this detail. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. The Starbucks on Cooper Avenue from 5 to noon. Tech support at Midwest Data from 1 to 6. Coding freelance until 2 in the morning. I take a sip of water. For 18 months straight. November 2019. Dr. Chen became my first investor. By 2022, our platform had diagnosed early-stage neurological conditions in over 4,000 patients. Aunt Patricia whispers something to Uncle Ray. I maintain my rhythm. Last month, Neuromedicines was acquired for $4.5 billion. I set my glass down with a soft clink against the table. Not because I married well. Not because I got lucky. Because I refused to accept the limitations placed on me in this room. Father clears his throat, face flushed. Now, Arletta, I always believed in you, in my own way. Really? I ask, one eyebrow raised. You were just so young, he continues, voice strained. A woman in tech, I was protecting you from disappointment. Dad explicitly forbade us from helping you, Merrick blurts out, surprising even himself. He glances at our father, then back at me. He said if we gave you money or connections, we'd be cut from the will. Clayton's fork drops against his plate. Merrick, what are you doing? Is that true? Mother turns to father, color draining from her face. I intercepted your letters because he told me to. She admits, looking at me with tears forming. He said letting you fail would teach you to appreciate family more. Aunt Patricia stands abruptly. Gordon, you told us Arletta refused your help. The room erupts in crossed accusations. Years of carefully maintained family mythology crumbling in real time. When Clayton suggests we simply move forward and forget the past, I hesitate. Should I accept this superficial peace for the sake of family harmony, or insist on genuine acknowledgement of the truth before any reconciliation could begin? My phone buzzes. Connor's name appears on the screen. My boyfriend of 3 years before I left Nebraska. The one who said my dreams were cute, but suggested I focus on realistic goals. The text reads, saw you in Forbes. Always knew you had potential. Coffee when you're in town? I show the message to my cousin Trish beside me, who rolls her eyes. I type back, thanks, but I prefer to leave the past in the past. I press send while everyone watches. A small act, but the message lands. Several family members nod with newfound respect. You had Thanksgiving dinner with the governor last month. Aunt Patricia says, breaking the awkward silence. Your cousin Joanne saw the pictures. The governor's daughter uses our platform at her hospital, I explain. She credits it with saving her father's life after detecting early signs of a stroke. Father stares at his hands. When he looks up, his eyes are wet. I was wrong about you, he says, voice breaking on the final word. The admission hangs in the air. Not an apology, but the closest thing to one I've ever heard from him. Around the table, expressions change. Aunt Patricia squeezes my shoulder as she passes to refill her coffee. Uncle Ray asks thoughtful questions about my company. Cousins who barely acknowledged me yesterday now lean in when I speak. Maybe, I suggest, setting down my napkin, we should have a proper family meeting to discuss how we move forward from here. Father nods slowly. I think that would be appropriate. For the first time in 8 years, we might actually listen to each other. 2 weeks after the dinner confrontation, one Wednesday afternoon, Father leans forward across his mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd signed countless documents excluding me from the family legacy. The afternoon light catches the silver in his hair as he slides a folder toward me with the careful precision of a chess player. We've been thinking, he says, voice unnaturally bright. More manufacturing should reflect all the more children. I open the folder. Inside lies a mock-up of new company letterhead with Moore and Daughter Manufacturing emblazoned across the top in glossy navy text. My stomach tightens. We've already printed promotional materials, Merrick adds, pointing to a stack of brochures on the corner of the desk. The announcement goes out next week. Clayton clears his throat. The board thinks your profile could attract new investors. He shuffles his feet. The company could use a cash infusion. You've done well for yourself, Father says, his voice softening into the tone he once used when asking me to be reasonable about giving up my MIT scholarship. Imagine what your expertise and resources could do for the family business. I run my finger over the letterhead, feeling the raised text beneath my fingertip. After all these years of dismissal, they finally found a use for me, my money, my reputation, my success they had no part in building. I appreciate the thought, I say, closing the folder with a soft click. Good, good. Father nods, his shoulders relaxing. We'll schedule the press conference for... I didn't say yes. My voice slices through his premature celebration. Father blinks, momentarily disoriented. But you said... I said I appreciated the thought, which I do. I stand, smoothing my skirt. It's a revealing one. The grandfather clock in the corner ticks heavily into the silence. Mother shifts in her chair by the window, her eyes darting between Father and me like a trapped bird. I've been doing some thinking too, I continue, about legacy and impact. I open my laptop, turning the screen toward them. The web page displays a professionally designed site with the More Innovation Fund at the top, underneath a banner of women in hard hats, lab coats, and business attire. What is this? Father leans forward, squinting. I'm creating a $10 million endowment for women in STEM and manufacturing, focusing specifically on Nebraska entrepreneurs. I scroll down to show the application portal. We're already accepting submissions for our first round of grants. Clayton's mouth opens and closes without sound. Merrick grips the edge of the desk. 10 million? Mother whispers. To start. I close the laptop. The companies these women build will change the landscape of American manufacturing. They'll create jobs, innovations, and entirely new markets. But the family business, Father begins, will remain exactly what it's always been. I meet his gaze steadily. Your legacy. I don't need your legacy, Father. I've built my own. The muscle in his jaw twitches, a familiar sign of mounting frustration. For the first time, I don't feel the automatic urge to placate him. Let's discuss this over dinner, Mother suggests, her voice thin with tension. We migrate to the dining room, that battlefield where Father first announced my disinheritance. The table stretches between us, polished to a high gleam that reflects the chandelier light. Crystal glasses catch and scatter rainbows across the tablecloth. Father carves the roast with short, forceful strokes. This fund of yours, he says finally, it's a nice charity project, but real business requires experience. The fund isn't charity, I correct him. It's investment. And speaking of experience, I turn toward Mother, who startles slightly under the unexpected attention. I'd like you to join the board of directors, Mom. The carving knife freezes mid-slice. Mother's water glass stops halfway to her lips. Lorraine doesn't know the first thing about business, Father sputters. She's never worked a day. She raised 3 children while maintaining this house and supporting your career. I counter. She managed family finances, organized charitable events, and built community connections that benefited more manufacturing for decades. Mother sets her glass down carefully. Gordon always handled the important decisions, she says softly. And how has that worked for you? I ask her directly. A strange expression crosses her face, something between fear and curiosity. The board meets quarterly. I continue. First meeting is in February. You'd have a vote on all funding decisions. She can't possibly, Father begins. I accept, Mother says. The words fall into the room like stones into still water. Father's fork clatters against his plate. Lorraine, he says, voice low with warning. Mother straightens in her chair. It's time I had a voice too, Gordon. Quote. The remainder of dinner passes in weighted silence. Merrick studies his plate while Clayton attempts small talk that dies quickly. Mother eats with surprising appetite, her movements more decisive than I've seen in years. Weeks later, rumors reach me through business channels. Father has started seeing Dr. Hanover, a therapist specializing in controlling behavior. Clayton mentions it casually during our monthly video call, as if discussing the weather. People can change, my brother says, not quite meeting my eyes. At least, that's what Dad's learning. I think of Mother preparing for her first board meeting, calling me with questions about Robert's Rules of Order. I think of the first grant recipient, a woman developing biodegradable packaging materials, crying when we called with the news. The day before I leave San Francisco for a tech conference in Boston, Father calls. His voice sounds different, less certain, more human. Arletta, he says, my name awkward in his mouth after years of minimal use. Will you come back next Christmas? The question hangs between us, fragile and loaded with unspoken history. I look at the calendar on my office wall, already marked with next year's plans. I'll think about it, I tell him, and for the first time, I mean it. A year later, during Christmas time, I pull the lucid air into the familiar driveway, no longer hiding who I've become. Through the windshield, I see them gathered on the porch, not the stiff, formal reception of years past, but genuine smiles, open arms. My mother waves enthusiastically, a gesture that would have seemed impossibly exuberant just a year ago. Aunt Arletta. Lacey races down the steps, her tablet clutched to her chest. At 15, she's all gangly limbs and fierce intelligence. I need to show you something. Inside, the house feels different. The same furniture, the same Christmas decorations. But the air has shifted. No longer charged with unspoken resentments, it breathes more freely now. I wrote this program myself, Lacey whispers, pulling me into a corner. Her Python code fills the screen clumsy in places, brilliant in others. Mom said computers are for boys, but I showed her your TED Talk about neural networks. I squeeze her shoulder. Keep going. The world needs your mind. My brothers greet me with handshakes that turn into awkward hugs. Clayton's eyes hold an apology still working its way to his lips. Merrick mentions a manufacturing problem his team can't solve, asking my opinion without the defensive edge that once coded his words. When dinner is served, I take my place at the table, the same table where everything shattered and began to rebuild. Father stands at the head, carving the turkey with steady hands. His hair has more silver now, his posture less rigid. Before we eat, he says, lifting his glass, I want to toast my children, each successful in their own way. His eyes meet mine directly, no longer sliding past. I'm proud of all of you. A year ago, these words would have been everything validation I'd craved like oxygen. Now, I accept them with a smile, feeling their warmth without needing their heat to survive. The neural interface, your company developed for stroke patients. Mother mentions between bites. The Times called it revolutionary. I explain the technology without downplaying its importance or my role in its creation. No more shrinking to fit someone else's idea of my place. My voice carries the authority of someone who knows her worth. The doorbell chimes, and I rise. That's my guest. Miss Dobbins enters with a bottle of wine and a lifetime of believing in students when no one else would. Her gray hair is styled in a sleek bob now, her posture still teacher straight at 70. You remember Miss Dobbins, I say, though everyone does. She taught 3 generations of Moors, surviving my father's budget cuts when he chaired the school board. Later, when glasses are refilled, I stand. To those who see our potential when we can't see it ourselves. Miss Dobbins blinks rapidly, her glasses fogging slightly. My father nods, something humble in the gesture. Spring sunshine floods my San Francisco office 6 months later as I adjust my camera. 30 teenage girls from rural Nebraska stare back from my monitor, their faces eager during our virtual coding workshop. Never let anyone tell you what you can't build. I tell them, spotting Lacey in the corner of my screen. She's already helping the girl beside her debug her code. Nico, my brother's son, pokes his head into my office. The investors are here, Aunt Arletta. His summer internship has already taught him more than 4 years of business school taught my brothers. On my desk sits a new family portrait from Easter. My mother stands tall, confidence radiating from her posture. The More Innovation Fund board position suits her. Father stands beside me, not above me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. As I look at our new family portrait, I wonder which matters more in the end, being right about the past or being open to a different future. Would you choose to hold on to the satisfaction of vindication or embrace the possibility of genuine change, even if it means letting go of justified resentment?
I press my palms against my navy silk dress, smoothing invisible wrinkles as I stand before the imposing double doors of the Oakmont Country Club. My heart pounds against my ribs like it's trying to warn me. Turn around, go home, save yourself. But I'm already here, my sensible heels already clicking against the marble entryway. My gift already wrapped in expensive paper that costs more than the bottle of scotch it contains. Miss? Your name? Asks the attendant, a young man with a too-tight bow tie who doesn't realize he's guarding the entrance to my personal purgatory. Tessa Reynolds, I reply, the name feeling strangely formal on my tongue. I'm Michael's daughter. His eyes flicker with recognition. Of course, Miss Reynolds. The celebration is in the grand ballroom. I nod and step inside, immediately enveloped by the familiar scent of money, subtle cologne, fresh flowers, and polished wood. The sounds of 120 people laughing, clinking glasses, and engaging in carefully curated conversations echoes through the vaulted ceilings. Dad's 60th birthday celebration is exactly what he wanted. A display of wealth and influence wrapped in the guise of a family gathering. I spot him across the room, silver-haired and commanding, in his tailored suit, surrounded by colleagues who hang on his every word. He doesn't see me. He never does. Not right away. I've learned to exist in the periphery of his vision, a shadow daughter who shows up dutifully at these functions but never quite belongs. A server passes with champagne flutes balanced on a silver tray. I take one, grateful for something to hold, something to do with my hands. The bubbles tickle my nose as I take a small sip, scanning the room for a friendly face. Aunt Diane isn't here yet. Of course not. That would be too convenient. I drift toward the edges of the room, smiling politely at the familiar faces of Dad's friends who recognize me just enough to nod, but not enough to remember my name. It wasn't always this way. Before Melissa. Before the stepchildren who somehow fit better into the puzzle of his life than his own daughter ever did. Everyone, please find your table assignments at the entrance table, announces a voice I recognize immediately. Melissa, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, diamond earrings catching the light as she gestures toward the foyer. Dinner will be served in 20 minutes. My stepmother's eyes scan the room but conveniently skip over the corner where I stand. 15 years of practiced oversight. I make my way to the name tag table, arranged with Melissa's typical precision. Everything alphabetized, everything perfect. The Reynolds section is easy to find. Brandon, Kayla, Melissa, Michael. I flip through the elegant cards, each name written in Melissa's perfect calligraphy. My fingers freeze as I find mine. I stare at it, certain I'm hallucinating. But no, there it is, on the same heavy cardstock as the others, the same swirling script, but instead of Tessa Reynolds, it reads, The Letdown. The room seems to tilt around me. A rushing sound fills my ears, drowning out the party chatter. Across the room, I hear Melissa's distinctive laugh, a sound I've heard after countless small humiliations over the years. Suddenly, I'm 9 years old again, watching Dad pack his things, promising nothing would change. I'm 16, sitting alone at my debate championship, scanning the audience for a face that never appeared while he cheered at Brandon's mediocre football games. I'm 19, staring at my empty college fund, reading the withdrawal slip with Dad's signature while struggling to pay tuition as Instagram filled with photos of my step-siblings' European vacation. I'm every age I've ever been, standing in doorways, waiting for acknowledgement that never fully came. The name tag trembles between my fingers. I should leave. That's what they expect. For me to disappear quietly, to remove myself from their perfect family portrait. Aunt Diane's words from last week echo in my mind. Something feels off about this invitation, honey. You don't have to go. But I did go. And now I know why I was invited. My eyes lift from the name tag to see Dad finally noticing me from across the room. He raises his hand in a half wave, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Melissa turns, whispering something to Kayla, both of them watching me with poorly disguised anticipation. They're waiting for the tears, for the hasty exit, for the confirmation that I am exactly what the name tag declares, the family disappointment. A strange calm washes over me, cooling the initial shock and hurt. 15 years of subtle cruelty crystallized in 2 handwritten words. I place the name tag back on the table. Instead, I reach for a champagne glass from a nearby tray, my eyes never leaving the offensive card. The glass is cool against my palm, the stem delicate between my fingers. I tap it gently with my ring. Once. Twice. The soft clink carries, just as I intended. Nearby conversations pause. Heads turn toward the sound. One by one, voices hush as attention shifts to the woman standing alone at the name tag table with a raised glass. Dad's expression shifts from confusion to alarm. Melissa's smug smile falters. Brandon and Kayla exchange uncomfortable glances, shifting their weight from one foot to another as the room gradually falls silent. I take a single step forward. What would you do if your own family labeled you the letdown at a celebration? Would you quietly leave, or would you stand your ground? The glass in my hand catches the light, sending prisms dancing across the suddenly quiet room. I choose to stand. The first betrayal happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was taco night, and the smell of seasoned beef filled our small apartment kitchen as Dad explained he was leaving. 9-year-old me sat at our scratched wooden table, my taco shell crumbling in my fingers as he spoke. "Nothing will change between us, Tess," he promised, his hand resting on mine. "You'll always be my little girl." I believed him. Children do. 3 months later, I met Melissa. She worked at Dad's thermal perfect blonde hair and gleaming white teeth standing in our once familiar living room that now smelled of unfamiliar perfume. Behind her stood Brandon and Kayla, eyeing me with the detached curiosity of tourists viewing an exotic animal at the zoo. "We're going to be a family," Dad announced, his arm around Melissa's waist. "Won't that be wonderful?" I nodded because that's what good daughters do. I colored welcome cards for my soon-to-be step-siblings. I helped Mom pack my things for my first weekend at Dad's new house. I tried to blend into the seams of this patchwork family. The second betrayal was a slow unveiling, like watching paint peel off a wall over years of neglect. "Dad, my debate championship is Thursday at 7. I told him during our Wednesday phone call, my voice trembling with 15-year-old anticipation. "I'm opening for the affirmative position." "That's great, honey," he said, distraction evident in his voice. "I'll try to make it." 3 days later, I scanned the auditorium audience between rounds, my heart sinking as I recognized the pattern. The empty seat next to Mom, the unanswered text messages, the familiar ache of disappointment settling into my chest. That same night, Brandon scored the winning touchdown at his football game. I know because the photos dominated Dad's Facebook page for weeks, his arms slung around Brandon's shoulders, Melissa beaming beside them, Kayla flashing victory signs. The caption, "Couldn't be prouder of my son tonight." My debate trophy collected dust on my mother's mantle. Dad never asked to see it. They assigned me to clean the bathrooms again. I complained to Mom at 16 after another weekend at Dad's house. Brandon and Kayla never have to do it. It's always me. Mom's mouth tightened as she folded laundry. "Did you say something to Michael about it?" I had. His response echoed in my head. "You're just more responsible, Tessa. It's a compliment, really. Responsible enough to scrub toilets, but not important enough to celebrate." The pattern crystallized with each passing month. When Kayla turned 16, Dad rented an entire restaurant. There was a professional photographer, custom decorations, and a cake that cost more than my entire wardrobe. 2 months later, my 16th birthday warranted a hurried dinner at Olive Garden, where Dad checked his phone throughout the meal and left early for an important client meeting. But nothing compared to the third betrayal, the one that left financial scars alongside the emotional ones. I was 19, halfway through sophomore year, sitting cross-legged on my dorm room bed when I clicked on my college fund account. The balance glared back at me. $422.17. Last month, it had been $18,422.17. There must be some mistake. I told the bank representative, my voice hollow. The withdrawal was authorized on the 7th of February by account custodian Michael Reynolds, she replied. The signature matches our records. The 7th of February, 3 days before Brandon got his new Audi. The car that appeared on Instagram with the caption, "Best parents ever." While I worked double shifts at the campus coffee shop and the local restaurant, my textbooks propped open during rare slow moments. Mom fought. She hired a lawyer, spent money she didn't have trying to recover what Dad had taken. It was his name on the account too, her lawyer finally explained. defeat evident in his voice. Legally, he had access. Legally, perhaps? Morally? The question hung in the air between us, unanswered. I took extra courses each semester, worked through summers, and graduated in 3.5 years instead of 4. Meanwhile, Brandon and Kayla's social media documented their semester abroad in Europe, their spring breaks in Cabo, their lives unmarred by the weight of mounting student debt. Only Aunt Diane saw the truth, Dad's sister, with her penetrating gaze and unflinching honesty. "This isn't right, Michael," I overheard her saying during a rare family gathering. "You can't treat Tessa like she's an afterthought." "You're overthinking things again, Di," Dad replied, his voice carrying that familiar dismissive tone. "Tessa's fine. She's independent. Always has been. Independence born of necessity, not choice. A survival tactic misinterpreted as a personality trait. Melissa's methods were subtler, more insidious. The forgotten invitations to family events that I'd learned about through Facebook photos. The way she'd interrupt whenever I spoke to Dad. The backhanded compliments. "That dress actually looks nice on you, Tessa. Hide your shoulders." 15 years of paper cuts to the soul, none fatal on their own, but collectively hemorrhaging. "You're difficult to love," Melissa told me once, when we were briefly alone in her gleaming kitchen. "That's why Michael keeps his distance. You remind him too much of his mistakes." I became the family ghost present, but transparent. Relatives stopped calling after hearing Melissa's carefully crafted narratives about my attitude problems and ungrateful behavior. Holiday gatherings became exercises in strategic avoidance, with me volunteering for kitchen duty to escape the living room conversations that fell silent when I entered. So when Melissa personally called to insist I attend Dad's 60th birthday celebration, warning signals blared in my mind. "You have to come, Tessa," she said, her voice honeyed with artificial sweetness. "Your father would be so disappointed if his only daughter missed his milestone birthday." Aunt Diane called the next day. "Something feels off about this invitation, honey. Melissa's never pushed for you to attend anything before." Yet I went anyway. Dressed in navy silk, bearing an expensive gift, walking into the Oakmont Country Club with fragile hope that perhaps, finally, something had changed. Now, staring at the name tag with the letdown written in Melissa's perfect calligraphy, I understand that something had indeed changed. Me. I was no longer willing to accept the pattern. 15 years of betrayal crystallized in 2 handwritten words, and for the first time, I could see the complete picture with perfect clarity. Have you ever noticed a pattern of mistreatment that suddenly became crystal clear in one devastating moment? The room falls silent, sound evaporating like morning dew under a harsh sun. My champagne glass catches the light, sending crystalline reflections dancing across suddenly attentive faces. The background music some jazzy rendition of standards. Dad always pretends to appreciate a fades beneath the weight of anticipation. Dad takes 3 hurried steps toward me, his patent leather shoes clicking against marble with increasing urgency. His smile is strained, eyes darting between me and his confused guests. "Tessa, honey," he begins, voice pitched for public consumption. "Why don't we step outside for a moment?" Behind him, Melissa's crimson lips form urgent words as she leans toward Brandon. "Get her out of here," she hisses, not bothering to lower her voice enough. She's never had to be careful around me before. Why start now? Brandon shifts uncomfortably, caught between his mother's command and the room's collective gaze. He hesitates just long enough for me to sidestep Dad's approaching hand. "I'd like to propose a toast," I say, my voice steady and clear in a way I've never heard it before. The sound travels efficiently through the hushed room, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and returning stronger. To 60 years of Michael Reynolds. Dad's shoulders relax slightly. A practiced smile slides into place as he misreads the situation, assuming I've decided to play along after all. Several guests raise their glasses, relieved at what appears to be a return to scheduled programming. My father has always been concerned with appearances. I continue, each word measured and deliberate. With creating the perfect image. With being exactly how others perceive him. The relief in the room evaporates. Dad's smile freezes, then fractures at the edges. On the 14th of October, 2012, my college advisor called to inform me that my tuition payment had bounced. I was 19. I pause, letting the date land. When I checked my college fund account, I discovered it had been emptied 5 days earlier. $18,000, withdrawn by the account's co-signer me father. A soft gasp comes from somewhere near the ice sculpture. Mrs. Harrington, I think. One of Dad's oldest clients. 3 days after that withdrawal, Brandon received a new Audi for his 25th birthday. My gaze finds my stepbrother, who has the decency to stare at his shoes. I worked 3 jobs to stay in school that semester. Night shifts at the campus library, weekends at a coffee shop, and evenings tutoring high school students. Melissa steps forward, her laugh brittle and forced. Tessa has always had a flair for drama, too much time in those theater classes. On the 8th of June, 2016, I continue as if she hadn't spoken. I graduated with honors. I have the photos of the empty seat reserved for my father. He was at Kayla's apartment warming party. I turned slightly. A lovely event, from what I saw on Instagram later. Dad moves again, this time more decisively. That's enough, Tessa. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm not embarrassing myself. I reach my clutch and remove the name tag, holding it up so the elegant calligraphy is visible. The letdown. This is what you allowed to be written about your daughter. This is what you and Melissa thought was appropriate for a father's 60th birthday celebration. The crowd's collective intake of breath is audible. Someone mutters, "Jesus Christ," from the back of the room. Tessa, you're clearly upset, Dad attempts, his authoritative boardroom voice failing him now. I'm not upset, I say, surprised to discover it's true. I'm simply done. A movement to my left catches my eye. Aunt Diane slips through the crowd to stand beside me, her hand briefly squeezing mine before dropping away. Her presence, the warm solidarity of it, makes my voice even stronger. For 15 years, I've watched you build a new family while systematically pushing me to the margins of your life. I've made excuses for missed birthdays, forgotten achievements, and empty promises. I convinced myself it wasn't deliberate, that you were just busy, just distracted, just anything but intentionally cruel. I scan the room, noting the subtle shifts in the crowd. Mr. Patel, Dad's golf partner, is nodding slightly. Mrs. Feldman looks directly at Melissa with newfound suspicion. Even Dad's longtime photographer has lowered his camera, unwilling to document this unscripted moment. But this, I hold up the name tag again, this took planning. This took deliberate cruelty. This took all 3 of you. Brandon starts to protest, but Kayla nudges him silent, both of them slinking back toward the nearest wall. I came here tonight out of some lingering sense of family obligation. Some hope that maybe, finally, I was being included in a genuine way. My voice doesn't waver, doesn't crack. Each word emerges clear and precise, carrying the weight of accumulated truth. Instead, I found confirmation of what I've suspected for years, that I'm not a you. I'm an inconvenience, a reminder of a life you'd rather forget. Dad's face has lost its rehearsed composure. His authority in the room, the carefully cultivated gravitas he's built over decades, visibly diminishes with each word I speak. Melissa attempts another laugh, a well-practiced social tool that's served her for years, but it falls utterly flat in the weighted silence. This isn't a performance for sympathy, I continue. It's not an emotional outburst or an attempt at revenge. It's simply the truth, spoken aloud after 15 years of silence. I turn slightly, deliberately meeting the eyes of people who've known me since childhood. People who've watched from the sidelines as I was gradually erased from family photographs, conversations, and considerations. To those of you who suspected something wasn't right, all these years, thank you for your concern, however quietly expressed. To those who were complicit, I hope you reflect on the kind of family dynamics you've enabled. I raise my glass one final time, the champagne gleaming under the chandelier lights. I'd like to toast to the last time you will ever see me, to the end of pretending, to the beginning of a life unburdened by the weight of your disappointment. I don't drink. Instead, I gently place the full glass on the nearest tableau dramatic smashing, no wine thrown in faces, just a quiet, deliberate placement. The soft clink as glass meets marble punctuates my final statement more effectively than any shouted words could. With the same measured calm, I place the letdown name tag beside the glass. A museum piece. Evidence. I walk toward the exit, back straight, pace unhurried. No tears. No rushing. Just the steady click of my sensible heels against marble, creating a rhythm that feels like freedom. Behind me, the vacuum of stunned silence persists. Not a single voice rises to break it, not even Dad's. In his own house, surrounded by his carefully cultivated society, he has nothing to say that could possibly undo what has just occurred. As the heavy double doors close behind me, I realize I'm smiling. Not from vindication or revenge, but from the simple, profound relief of finally being honest. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not trying to be what Michael Reynolds wants in a daughter. I'm simply being Tessa. The heavy door clicks shut behind me with finality. The country club's elegant exterior looms at my back as I stand motionless in the parking lot, breathing in the crisp evening air. My hands should be shaking, my heart should be racing. Instead, a strange calm washes over me like a warm tide. Inside, chaos erupts. Even through the thick wooden doors, I hear the swell of voices, a symphony of confusion, shock, and judgment rising to the vaulted ceilings. I imagine Melissa's face, that practiced smile cracking, as she flutters from guest to guest. She's always been dramatic, never could handle family gatherings. We've tried everything with her. My car feels like a sanctuary. I slide into the driver's seat, place my purse carefully beside me, and breathe. For 15 years, I've been holding my breath at these gatherings, measuring each word, calculating each smile. The exhaustion of performance finally lifts from my shoulders. I don't turn on the ignition immediately. Instead, I watch the country club entrance. Within 20 minutes, guests begin trickling out, couples with tight smiles and hushed conversations, checking watches though the party should have lasted 3 more hours. Dad's celebration is collapsing like a souffle punctured too soon. Melissa must be frantic. The thought brings no joy, just a quiet acknowledgement of consequence. My phone begins its assault before I reach the highway. It buzzes relentlessly against the passenger seat where I've tossed it. At a red light, I glance at the screen. 4 missed calls from Dad already, 2 from Melissa, 1 from Brandon. The text notifications stack like falling dominoes. From Dad, 8:42 p.m. Call me immediately. We need to discuss your behavior. From Dad, 8:55 p.m. You've embarrassed yourself in this family. Pick up the phone, Tessa. From Dad, 9:17 p.m. Your mother put you up to this, didn't she? From Dad, 9:34 p.m. Please call me back. We can fix this. The progression from command to plea would have pulled me back once. I would have answered, explained myself, apologized for causing a scene, the familiar dance steps of our dysfunctional waltz. Not tonight. Melissa's contribution arrives as I'm unlocking my apartment door. Your father built everything you have. This petty stunt might damage his business relationships. Is that what you wanted? To hurt the whole family because you felt slighted? I read it twice, noting how she frames Dad's reputation as the whole family, while my experience remains a mere slight. The message lands differently now. Like examining a painting I've restored, I see the subtle brushstrokes of manipulation that were always there beneath the varnish of concern. Brandon texts next. That was intense. You okay? Then Kayla. You could have just told Mom the name tag bothered you, instead of making Dad's birthday about yourself. I place my phone on the kitchen counter, switch it to Do Not Disturb, and pour myself a glass of water. The silence of my apartment embraces me. For the first time before a family event, I sleep deeply, dreamlessly, without the familiar knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. Morning brings a fresh barrage. I document each message methodically in a notebook, noting the time, sender, and content. The pattern emerges clearly on paper. Dad's messages swinging between authority and desperation, Melissa's veiled threats about family reputation, the step-siblings' awkward attempts to minimize what happened. More telling are the family-wide communications. Aunt Diane forwards me the email Dad sent to extended family at 6:14 a.m. We're concerned about Tessa. She had what appeared to be a breakdown at my birthday celebration last night. Melissa and I believe work stress has been taking a toll, and we're consulting with a family therapist about how to best support her during this difficult time. We appreciate your discretion as we handle this private family matter. I print the email, underline key phrases, and add it to my documentation folder. The narrative control is precise, transforming my clarity into confusion, my boundary into breakdown. My phone rings with an unfamiliar number around noon. I let it go to voicemail, then listen with surprise to hear Martin Geller, Dad's golf partner of 20 years and his attorney for even longer. Tessa, it's Martin. I was at the party last night. I'm calling to say, well, you showed remarkable composure. I've known your father a long time, but what I witnessed. Please call if you need anything. And I mean anything. By afternoon, Aunt Diane reports that 3 couples have quietly asked her for my contact information. The country club manager called Dad about his membership renewal, supposedly routine but suspiciously timed. The foundation board, where Melissa chairs the social committee, is suddenly reviewing leadership rotation schedules. The whispers have begun, and whispers are the one thing Melissa has never learned to control. For 7 days, I maintain my silence. I go to work, restore a damaged landscape painting, have dinner with friends who know nothing of family drama. I sleep well. I breathe easily. On the 8th day, I craft a single email to my father. Dad, I am open to rebuilding our relationship under the following conditions. 1. We meet with a family therapist of my choosing for a minimum of 6 sessions. 2. You acknowledge without qualification the pattern of favoritism and exclusion that has defined our relationship since your remarriage. 3. Our communication remains between us, without Melissa's management or interpretation. I require your response within 2 weeks. After that, I will consider your silence a decision. Tessa, I press send, then close my laptop. The antique clock on my mantel ticks steep, marking time that now moves at my pace, not theirs. I fix a cup of tea and settle into my reading chair, preparing for the inevitable backlash to my first real boundary. Strange how the hardest walls to build are the ones that protect us from those who should have sheltered us from the start. I grip my phone tighter as the text message flashes on the screen. Mom called. Dad's having chest pains. Please call. Melissa's third attempt this week to breach my carefully constructed walls, her escalation tactics becoming increasingly desperate. 3 days ago, it was my father appearing at the museum where I work, his imposing figure drawing stares as he cornered me between a Degas restoration and the staff break room. Yesterday, it was the concerned family friend, Martha, who just happened to be at my favorite coffee shop, ready with rehearsed lines about forgiveness and second chances. I delete the message without responding. The supposed health scare is textbook manipulation. I've documented each pattern in my therapy journal. Michael Reynolds hasn't had so much as a blood pressure issue in his 60 years. I check my watch, my grandmother's vintage Omega, the one possession my father couldn't control, and take a steadying breath. 20 minutes until the meeting I finally agreed to after 6 weeks of their relentless pursuit, on my terms, not theirs. The cafe I've chosen sits across from the public library, its wide windows and constant flow of patrons ensuring no scene can erupt without witnesses. I arrive early to secure the corner table back to the wall, clear view of both entrances. Rachel, my colleague from the museum's restoration department, settles 2 tables away with her laptop, close enough to intervene if needed, distant enough to provide privacy. You've got this, she says, squeezing my shoulder before taking her position. At precisely 3 p.m., they arrive, me, father, and Melissa, overdressed for a casual coffee shop in tailored wool and cashmere. Michael's silver hair is freshly cut, his expression practiced into concerned fatherhood. Melissa's diamond earrings catch the light as she scans the room, her smile faltering when she spots me already seated, composed, a manila folder placed precisely before me. Tessa, my father says, leaning in for a hug I don't reciprocate. You look well. They settle awkwardly into the mismatched vintage chairs. Melissa visibly recoiling from a water ring on the wooden table. This isn't their country club. This isn't their controlled environment. The discomfort shows in their posture, in their darting glances at neighboring tables where college students tap on laptops and young mothers wrangle toddlers. We've been so worried. Melissa begins, her voice dropping into the concerned register I've heard her practice on phone calls with her friends. This distance isn't healthy for any of us. My father clears his throat, hands clasped on the table he's boardroom pose. Family obligations go both ways, Tessa. Whatever. This understanding occurred at my birthday. Surely we can move past it like adults. I remained silent, watching his delivery, noting how his eyes flicked to Melissa for approval after each carefully crafted sentence. We wanted to talk about how we can help you through this difficult time, he continues. There's that apartment complex you were looking at near the museum. We could help with the down payment. Money. Always his solution. The same solution he tried when he emptied my college fund for Brandon's car. The same solution he offered when I graduated with honors and no family in attendance. Melissa leans forward, a tissue appearing magically in her manicured hand. I know we've had our differences, she says, her eyes suddenly glistening with well-timed tears. But you're still family. You'll always be family. And family matters, Tessa. My father's voice hardened slightly, not just emotionally, but practically. Connections, inheritance, the firm's client network, these aren't small considerations for your future. The threat lies just beneath the surface. Remember what you stand to lose. Without speaking, I open the manila folder, removing its contents with deliberate care. First, the college fund withdrawal slip with my father's signature, preserved in a plastic sleeve. Next, a printed email chain documenting Melissa's instructions to exclude me from the family Christmas card. Third, a transcript of Melissa's voicemail to my mother attempting to drive a wedge between us. Finally, I withdraw the name tag, still in its pristine sleeve, the elegant calligraphy spelling the letdown visible to everyone at our table. What is this? My father demands, his business voice emerging. Documentation, I answer, my voice steadier than I feel. 15 years of it. And this, I slide forward a sealed letter on my therapist's letterhead, identifying details carefully redacted, is a professional assessment of the family dynamics at play. Melissa's tears vanish. Are you recording this? Is this some kind of setup? I'm protecting myself, I say, placing my phone visibly on the table, which I've learned is necessary. My father's mask slips then, his jaw tightening as control visibly evaporates. This is ridiculous. We came here to reconcile, not to be ambushed with. With evidence, I interrupt, surprising myself with my composure. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to establish terms for any future contact. Melissa leans toward my father, whispering what she thinks I can't hear. I told you she'd make this impossible. Classic victim complex. The phone catches every syllable. This meeting has confirmed everything I said at the party, I say quietly, gathering my evidence back into the folder. I wish it hadn't. As I prepare to stand, my father makes one final grasp for control. You can't just erase 30 years of family, Tessa. You can't just walk away. I pause, folder in hand, and meet his gaze directly. I'm not erasing anything, I'm simply stopping the damage from continuing. The words land with physical force. I see it in the way they both recoil, in the dawning realization spreading across their faces. For the first time, they understand I mean it. This isn't negotiation. This isn't a plea for attention or a bargaining chip for more affection. This is goodbye unless fundamental change occurs. I stand, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. Rachel catches my eye from her table, ready to follow. As I walk away, I leave them frozen in the booth, staring at each other, roles permanently reversed. The power has shifted, and I don't look back. I trace my finger along the edge of the charcoal sketch's solitary tree, bending against an invisible wind that now hangs in my living room. Sunlight spills through windows unobstructed by heavy drapes, casting honeyed rectangles across hardwood floors I selected myself. My apartment isn't grand like the Reynolds estate, but every item here tells a story I chose, not one forced upon me. Almost ready? Mom calls from the kitchen, where the rich aroma of her signature rosemary bread mingles with something savory Aunt Diane is stirring. Just finishing these, I answer, pressing the final adhesive strip onto the back of a handwritten card. 1 year. 12 months since I walked away from the country club, my champagne glass abandoned alongside that damning name tag. The anxiety that once coiled around my ribs before family gatherings has dissolved, replaced by a gentle flutter of anticipation. On my coffee table sits my therapy journal, its edges softened by weekly use. Dr. Martinez had suggested documenting not just negative patterns, but moments of growth. Last week's entry reads, "Set boundary with work project without apologizing. Felt strong, not guilty." Small victories, but they accumulate like brushstrokes, forming a new self-portrait. I glance at the photo wall opposite my sofa faces of people who actually see me. Sarah and Marcus, college friends I'd gradually withdrawn from during those tense family years, now back in my life after genuine reconnection. Mom and Aunt Diane at my museum's conservation exhibit opening, beaming with unmanufactured pride. Even Elena, my mother's prickly sister who sends inappropriate birthday gifts but who called immediately after hearing about the incident, saying simply, "About time, honey." The holidays had been the true test. For years, I'd endured Melissa's perfectly orchestrated Christmas celebrations, where gift opening became a performance art, and my presence inevitably missed the mark. This year, I'd hosted a winter solstice dinner instead takeout Chinese food, mismatched plates, and absolutely no color-coordinated wrapping paper. The authentic laughter that filled this room that night had been worth every tradition abandoned. On my bedside table sits Dad's letter. Not an email, not a text-actual stationery with his law firm's embossed header, now repurposed for personal correspondence. "I failed you," it begins, followed by 3 pages that never once mention Melissa's name. It arrived 2 months ago. I've read it exactly once. The doorbell chimes, and I move toward it with steady steps, no longer dreading who might be on the other side. "Hey," Brandon says, shifting awkwardly in the hallway, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. "I brought that Syra you mentioned last time." His presence here still surprises me. Of all people, my stepbrother was the one who reached out after 3 months of silence, meeting me for coffee without his mother's knowledge. "What she did was cruel," he'd said simply. "And I've been complicit for too long. We're building something tentative but real, a relationship defined by choice rather than circumstance." In the kitchen, Mom and Aunt Diane work in comfortable tandem, their shared history of navigating Michael Reynolds visible in their shorthand communication. Diane catches my eye and winks, no longer needing to disguise her loyalty. As guests begin to arrive, I place my handcrafted cards at each setting. Not name tags, identity markers. Each bears a word I've chosen deliberately: the compassionate for Mom, the truth teller for Diane, the evolving for Brandon. The last card I hold a moment longer, tracing my own handwriting: the resilient. I pin it to my sweater, a declaration and a promise. Reconciliation with Dad may come someday, on my terms, when and if it serves my well-being. Forgiveness and renewed relationship aren't the same thing, a distinction I'm still learning to navigate. The apartment fills with voices, genuine laughter cascading through rooms that hold no ghosts. Family, I've discovered, isn't inherited, it's cultivated, chosen, and earned through consistent care. As I move toward the gathering, I feel the rightness of this truth settling into my bones.